So as we round off the year, I thought I would tell you guys some of the best deals to look out for in the new year, as right now the used market has got some of the best deals that I've seen in a long time. Firstly, the reason for my lack of uploads has mainly been a mixture of exams, and just this week when I went to copy the 4 videos that I had actually recorded, they spontaneously disappeared. So all I'm left with now is 30 seconds of me zip tying an AMD Wraith cooler onto a Pentium D. So there isn't really much that I can do there, however I am aiming to get all these videos re-recorded as soon as possible. But for now, let's talk about the best used price performance on the market right now. If you're in the UK or US, or most other countries actually, LGA1155 is the best socket to buy into, as right now, the boards are some of the cheapest that I've seen in a long time, as they're available starting at £30 or dollars, and around this on AliExpress if you're in Europe. They run virtually all Sandy Bridge chips, and Ivy Bridge chips as well, and as long as you don't mind not being able to overclock, you can use that money elsewhere to get a better GPU or CPU. However, if you do want to overclock, I have seen some of the Z77 boards go for well under £60 or $70, which is a bit expensive for a used motherboard. However, they will offer you nearly all the features of a modern high-end motherboard, aside from some smaller things such as M2 SSD support, but you can get a PCIe expansion card to remedy this issue. As for the main thing, once you've already got a board, you'll want a CPU, won't you? And well, here's the best thing, they are at the lowest price I've ever personally seen them, as many of the users have upgraded to Ryzen, trying to sell their boards and CPUs quickly and cheaply. So starting with the cheapest CPU that you should buy on the socket, we have the Core i3, which includes the 2100, 2120 and the 3220, pretty much they all perform very similar. However, they are still capable in numerous amounts of games, and cost as low as £10, $15, or about €20 if you order them online. They have 2 cores and 4 threads, and they haven't really slowed down just yet. And for most titles, it's fine thanks to its decent clock speed and IPC. I've seen it handle the likes of PUBG and GTA 5 just fine, as long as you aren't bothered about blisteringly high frame rates. Realistically though, these are more of an entry point to the socket, as the main things to look for are the Core i5s and the Core i7s. And the Core i5 is really the main star, as the Core i5-2400 offers Core i3-6100 performance, which is very good as someone that's actually used the CPU up until recently, and I can assure you that the performance will be way more than adequate for pretty much every game available today. The Core i5 costs around £30, $35 or €45. All of these prices are definitely worth it when you look at the performance figures, although they are a tad more expensive in Europe, which seems to be a trend that you'll notice with a lot of these parts. However, they're still not bad prices. You can't really overclock them, you can BCLK overclock them a little bit, but realistically it's just not worth it, as the board will cost you too much to even let you do that. Though the modern day performance and stock speed is definitely good. You'll be able to run virtually all of today's games without busting the bank, and they use solder, unlike later Intel CPUs, so the risk of them getting too hot doesn't seem to be much of an issue here. And finally, the best CPUs of the bunch are the Core i7s on the socket. With £75, $75 or €98 as a price point, it isn't bad in any country, especially when in most gaming benchmarks I've seen this chip going right up against Skylake and KB Lake i7s, and it's not even bottlenecking till you look at GTX 1080 territory, in which case I'd probably recommend looking at a processor that isn't sub £100, as it's not really going to be the best option. But still, with DDR4 being extremely expensive, I mean it costs about £120 for what cost me £32 a couple of years ago, the prices are astronomical. So realistically, with these sockets you still get to use your DDR3 RAM, which is incredibly cheap, costing £30 for 8GB over here, €52 in most of Europe, and $53 if you're in America. A bit more expensive in the latter two, however 8GB has proved fine for me, from everything from 4K editing to running all the latest games, so 8GB is definitely okay there. Lastly, you do get quick sync encoding with these CPUs, which means you can record your gameplay with little to no performance hit, thanks to the iGPU taking on the job of doing it. Although only being an Intel HD 2000, it can manage 1080p 60fps recording with a modest bitrate, which would help some of you out if you're looking to record your gameplay. Now, just as a side note, if you're going to be getting into editing or streaming or recording, then I highly recommend looking at the X58 socket, as you can get a 6-core 12-thread Xeon, which will not only only help with rendering times, but will also make your streaming and recording much easier, as trust me, I'm using 6 cores right now, and it makes things a hell of a lot smoother on my side. So for productivity, look into getting an overclockable X58 motherboard with a 6-core Xeon. Really though, I will definitely get around to covering this in another video, as this one is mainly for consumers who want to game, not so much those of us who want to edit and stream. However, if you do feel like you need 6 cores, I definitely recommend going down that route. As for the GPU side of things, it's a bit of an odd area, so on the cheaper side, do look into getting a HD 770, HD 5850, HD 6850, GTX 465 or GTX 560 or anything around this level of power, as they seem to be relatively cheap. The HD 770 is my main choice here, as AMD really has some amazing driver support for it, it has low power consumption, and it's available in most countries. However, it would set you back about £30, $35 or €50. I have reviewed the HD 5770 myself and used it for a long time before I had my R9 285 or AMD Fury, and I can assure you that it will run all games well, ranging from PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds to GTA 5 with well over 60 FPS with some tweaking. If you opt for the HD 5770, you also get AMD VCE support, which allows you to record without a performance hit. It works well at lower bit rates and has since proved superior to NVENC encoding or QuickSync encoding, but for recording you can use whatever suits you best. A step up from this is the GTX 580, which performs between a GTX 950 and GTX 1050 if its power is being used right. It will use a lot more power, but seems to be one of the best budget cards that I've seen above this for a long time. It costs around £40 in the UK or $50 in the US, and if you compare it, this card is definitely something with its raw power and enticing DirectX 12 support. The drivers are constantly updated, although not optimizations, they are bug fixes, so do prove useful. And nothing else really comes close to it in this region, unless you can find a good deal on a GTX 660 or HD 7850, which seem to be around this price on occasion, however they do seem to be a little bit rarer, in which case they do make for a good low-powered alternative, especially the HD 7850, which I have used quite a bit, and it does get modern drive support with optimizations and not just bug fixes. Now if we look at the slightly better options under £100, we have the R9 285, which I tested in my Ryzen PC video when it was my actual main driver, and the card can pretty much run all games at 1080p 60fps with high settings or 4K 30fps with lower settings. The GTX 770, which sells around £70 or dollars, has similar performance and seems to be a little bit less rare. If you can put up with slower performance in more recent games and a higher TDP, then this card seems to be a bit more common. They are ideal for 1080p high and medium settings, and are some of the best cards I've seen in this segment for a while. I've personally tested the GTX 770 and R9 285 and can attest to their performance. For Europeans, you can still get similar-ish performance, but it's going to cost you. With €102 for the GTX 760, you might have to search locally to get a better deal, as we know that there are ones out there. The GTX 760 performs slightly better than the GTX 1050, which is also available as an option to you for pretty much the same price. But really though, I'd opt for a brand new AMD or Nvidia ones, as the RX 460 does seem to be quite compelling at that price point if you can get a FreeSync monitor. And the performance on either side isn't bad there. Really though, check your local selling sites, as this seems to be more of a last resort. And finally, at the highest price point that we're going to deal with in this video, we have the £200 mark, which offers you the AMD Fury if you're in the UK or US around this price. It has some of the best performance that I've ever used, and is around GTX 1070 performance for GTX 1060 price, with FreeSync making the experience even smoother than that of a GTX 1070 if you do actually have a FreeSync capable monitor. Driver support is lovely, and VCE far outpaces NVENC when it comes to the quality of the encode. Undervolting does take around 15 seconds to actually do in AMD Wattman, which is a lovely overclocking utility, and will not only lower power consumption, but will boost your performance. Changing textures from Ultra to High will stop any VRAM related issues, as Ultra commonly just makes the game use far too many resources for very little improvement. However, you can still run most games in Ultra, aside from some of the latest releases. From 1080p to 4K, I have yet to find a game that I can't play on this card, And if you don't want the Fury or want to save a little bit more money, you can look at the R9 290, which costs about £140. They have all the aforementioned perks such as undervolting VCE support, and offer GTX 1060/RX 580 performance on a budget. The GTX 1080 Ti has also come down a lot in price, and can still perform okay today if you can't find either of the AMD cards due to miners, which is more of a US kind of issue, so I'm going to direct that type of purchase towards US consumers. However, do keep in mind that it isn't aging too well compared to the R9. Still, it has decent performance in a lot of titles, and this is where I come to the bad news. For Europeans, this is really a matter of looking locally, as all I could find is the GTX 1050 Ti, which is nowhere near worth €200, as the GTX 1050 is only about 110, so €90 for that little improvement just isn't worth it. So do look around on your local selling sites. US viewers will probably find the similar deals to the UK viewers, but do remember that there's more of an emphasis on the Nvidia side due to mining still being more of an issue in the US market. Also, as a final point, thanks to Christmas, a lot of people will be upgrading their PCs, so look out for some killer deals on full used PC parts, which is very easy to do. As we've seen before, you can get some decent performance till you can afford a better system, or just upgrade the one you've bought. I hope this video has helped a lot of you out, especially those of you looking to get into PC gaming in the new year, as the used market right now is the best I think it's ever been. It's good to be back, and I will be back with plenty more budget videos as soon as I can get them recorded. Happy New Year, and good night. Now I'm going to apologise for a few things that might seem off in this video, such as the quality and the complete lack of any filmed content, due to the fact that I have actually lost all the content. I literally don't have any of it, it's all gone. So I should be back with the new year with plenty more videos, as I'm aiming to re-record all the videos that I've lost. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in another video in 2018.